Welcome to the Power of Integrity podcast, where leadership aligns with principles. And today's guest is a perfect expert for the conversation and the topic. Welcome with me, Dr. Tess Breen. Dr. Breen is not only a CEO of her own company on leadership and communication skills expert, but she's also a full-time professor at Chapman University right here in Orange, California. Dr. Breen, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. And for those folks who don't know enough about you, would you please share with us and please dive in deeply on this topic a little bit about your personal professional journey, where you've been, what you're doing today, what's led up to all of that, and where you see yourself going in the future?
Sure, I'd be happy to. That's a pretty loaded question. I first became interested in the idea of studying leadership just through a series of horrible bosses. And kind of early in my career, I found myself thinking there's got to be a better way than this. I truly never had a boss that I really liked or respected. And so I first decided to pursue a master's degree in organizational leadership only out of interest to just be a better manager as I was progressing in my career. And I really kind of took to it, became really interested in it. Had a career in fashion marketing. That's kind of where I started out, which I loved. But then as my personal life started changing, I got married, had a baby, and then another baby. I have 4 kids. So I would say that's probably my first full-time job is being their mom. And I just, I saw so much value in personal growth and trying to transform myself, not only for, professionally, but with my family. And that led me to all the way to get my doctoral degree in leadership, shifted out of the corporate space and went into education full time. And so I've been teaching for about 10 years now. This is my third year full time at Chapman, but I've been teaching at a few other local universities before that. And yeah, besides that, in my personal life, my oldest daughter is adopted through foster care. So that's a huge part of my life. I'm a huge advocate for kids in foster care or aging out of foster care. So I've been a supporter of Orangewood Foundation and some other local nonprofits that support transitional age youth. That's something that's really big on my heart, as well as animal rescue. I have 2 rescue dogs. Yeah, and I'm a mom of 4. So my kids are between the ages of 15 and 5, 4 kids. So I would consider that my first job. And then my second job is leading a consulting firm. So I do executive coaching, I do seminars on leadership training and things like that for nonprofits, for profits. So I'm available for those types of services. And then full time, I'm also teaching at Chapman. I teach undergraduate and graduate level management and leadership courses.
So you have an empty plate, it sounds like.
You know, I drink my coffee in the morning and maybe a little one in the afternoon too, but it's a lot of fun. I feel so blessed to get to do what I do. I feel like my purpose and my passion in life is just to help other people become the best version of themselves. And that sounds maybe a little bit cheesy, but I get so much reward from helping people. It's why I have the heart for the foster youth, to reach their potential, and the same with my undergraduate students and then my graduate students too, who are oftentimes in a career transition. And I know what that's like. And being able to walk alongside people as they're discovering what their passions are, like I have, is just very rewarding to me.
Well, it's screaming through the screen that you have a huge heart, and we know you have a very bright intellect. So we're going to dive in a little bit into that. I love that you mentioned about horrible bosses. Kind of was reminding me of the movie, but
Yeah,
more importantly, I remember a mentor in my life who said, there's 2 kinds of people in this world in terms of teachers: those that teach you what to do and those that teach you what not to do. And it sounds like
absolutely.
those folks that taught you what not to do propelled you into what you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. I had so many consecutive bad experiences. I was like, I was starting to get worried, honestly, that I was going to become that type of a boss, and I didn't want that to happen. So yeah, that it's kind of started a journey. And one of the things I'll say that I learned about leadership, not as early on as I probably should have, was that it's so much more about leading yourself first than it is about leading someone else. And I don't think I figured that out until I was 30. I talked to somebody yesterday. He said he didn't learn that until he was 50. So I was a little bit ahead in that sense, but it felt like, man, I wish I would have known this when I was earlier, even 10 years before. It would have really benefited me. So that's something I do in my classroom with my, sophomores in college, and having them start to set personal development goals rather than just career goals. There's so much more as human beings, and talking about integrity and things that make a good leader. A lot of that just has to do with working on yourself more than it is about how you are with other people.
Is that, doctor, what you meant by leadership with self was about self-development, or is there something more to it, or am I confusing that?
So I can explain a little bit more. One of the things that's a really important part of my leadership journey is learning about emotional intelligence. So I became really interested in that concept and ended up writing my dissertation. How I became interested in that was I started learning about emotional intelligence had all these positive outcomes like academic performance, financial success. All these positive things of success are tied back to how well that you understand and regulate yourself emotionally, and how well you can read other people, understand their emotions, and then have positive relationships. So those are basically the elements of success if you really break it down. So I became interested in learning about, okay, at the time my kids were 2 and 4. I only had two at that point, which, I thought I was busy then. But I was looking at them, getting them ready. They were in preschool, getting ready to go to kindergarten, and my brain, high achiever, is going, okay, how do they, I want them to read early. I want them to be the best athletes. I was like turning into one of those tiger moms. And I was started to research, how can I make sure that they get this emotional intelligence thing that I'm learning at 30? How can I help them get that at 5 or younger? And that's what I became interested in. And I couldn't find that information at that time. And that's what they say you should write your dissertation. That question that you have that you can't find the answer to, that's your dissertation. So that was my dissertation. And I wanted to learn, how do you create this? You can't hand them a book and say, let me teach you about emotional intelligence. You have to demonstrate it to them in a way. So I'll save you the 300-page research analysis. And it's pretty simple. You have to get it for yourself and model that for them. Just like, our kids look at what we do, not what we say. And it's sort of that way when it comes to how we manage and regulate our emotions, how we deal with their emotions when those get difficult. And so being emotionally intelligent is how you lead with not only your kids, little kids, but people within your organization. You have to get it for yourself, kind of like the oxygen mask thing, and then model that for them. So it's a pretty simple concept, but doing that research really changed my approach to leadership, my approach to parenting. Is okay, there's no shortcut. You have to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And I think this is where it's a good connection to your topic of integrity is you have to be that best version of yourself. You have to have your values held strongly, and you have to be that person no matter what room you're in. And people are watching all the time. Our kids are watching. And so that's kind of what I learned. And so far, so good. I've got 2 teenagers in the house right now. They're incredible kids. So my experiment is working so far. So yeah, that's kind of how I arrived at all that and where my interest in it came from. But it's been so far a journey of trying to really live this out, not only in my professional life, but at home as well with my kids.
Well, you're the embodiment of what the definitions of integrity are. So I'm going to pivot to that. When you think about the word integrity, what comes to mind for you?
Um, yeah, so there's a few things. One of them I just said is like being the same, like holding your values really tightly, no matter the environment that you're in. And I think transparency. I think maybe when I was younger, and maybe even still, I'm kind of a blunt or direct person. I've always been that way. Blunt. What I've had to learn through my emotional intelligence is how to do that in a in a
Diplomatic way?
strategic way. Yeah, and I think, working with clients, I think building trust through openness and honesty. I mean, I you could ask anyone who knows me personally and they would say they know that they're going to get a straight answer. Like I will always be honest, but I'm doing it with the intention of care and concern and wanting the best for you. So I think establishing trust to know that the honesty and openness and directness is coming from a good place with good intentions. Um, it allows me to be probably more honest with people than maybe they're used to. But it's always in love and respect and kindness. And I think integrity really just comes from knowing who you are and knowing what your values are and having good intentions in the outcomes, right? I mean, not everything in business is about money. I think it's more important that it's about purpose and adding value and enriching people's lives, whether it's through a product that you're selling or a service. If you have the integrity that what you're doing and the work that you're doing has a meaningful impact, I think it's pretty easy to be a person of integrity if you create that environment.
Yeah, and your function as a CEO in the executive leadership area and communication skills. What role do you feel, from with all that given expertise, do you feel that integrity has in leading others?
I think it's just about understanding what their needs are and listening. Really, it's a lot of listening to sometimes what's being said, sometimes what's not being said. But I think having the right intentions and looking to serve rather than to lead, I think that's something a lot of times when you get I noticed too, because I have write the letters behind my name. Sometimes I get put in situations where I think, you know, my reputation is overly inflated. I have some expertise in a few things, but you have a lot of expertise in other things, and everyone I know has expertise in something. So I think I have certain skills that I've learned how to leverage, and that I know that I'm good at, and I can lean into those. But I know for a fact that everyone has that expertise and qualifications in certain areas. So um, I'm very comfortable. I think one of my principles of integrity too is admitting when I don't have all the answers. I think that imposter syndrome can creep in where you feel like you have to have the right answer. You have to say something really profound or wise or be the best or do something exceptional. And I know that I'm good at some things, many things actually, I can admit. But I'm not good at everything. I don't have all the answers. I have bad days. I think that humility factor to be able to say, um, wow, I don't know what to do. I mean, I'll touch on the political environment that we're dealing with right now post the Charlie Kirk assassination. And I have friends on both sides of the political aisle, and this is tough, and it's not black and white, and there's a range of people's reactions and feelings, and there's not necessarily a right answer, but to have the humility to say, like, okay, this can be true and this can be true at the same time, and where can we meet in a humble way and still have compassion and care for each other, and find our humanity despite all the ugliness and lack of humanity that we're seeing right now. So I think that's humility, honesty, integrity. Those all really go together.
Yeah, I think because you're on campus, that's even lived out in more vivid color than ever because you're on college campus and you're living and seeing that evolve much more closely than many of us in the for-profit or nonprofit worlds generally are seeing. The universities are clearly right at the vortex of all that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was younger, I it felt safer to see things in black and white, right? Like you want there to be a right and an answer and a wrong answer. And I think as my circle has expanded and as my experience has expanded and my network, um, there are very, very few things that are in black and white. And so I think, um, educating ourselves to be able to understand like how it connects with our own values. I think for me, um, I don't find myself in really sticky situations ethically because I know my values, I know where I stand, but that doesn't mean that I can't empathize or understand a different perspective. And so it's actually not quite as ugly on at least my college campus as maybe an outsider would expect. I think I saw a lot of empathy,
Well,
and
that was, I think it's more vibrant in that it's played out more clearly. That tension or the love and empathy is more vivid there than we're seeing in probably just regular environments.
yeah, I think people hold, at least on my campus, hold a little more space for each other than maybe we would give them credit for. So I'm very energized and inspired being around younger people. They make me think differently about my perspectives and having conversations with people from different backgrounds and things like that. That's something that I really enjoy doing, and I very strongly know who I am, but also, there's certain things that are black and white for me, but that list is very short. I mean, maybe less than 10 items on the list probably, but everything else is like I understand that everything's nuanced. And there's a big spectrum of feelings and beliefs and experiences that influence us, and all of that is okay. So it's kind of like listening, how do I show up for you? How do I show up as me while still allowing you to be you, and those kind of things. I think that's sort of some of the work that I do professionally is um, people usually call me when they have a people problem or a culture problem. And that's sort of where I'm able to come in and see maybe where things are not aligning and start working one-on-one. But what often I would say 90% of the time a CEO or an executive team will call me to fix their people problem. But of course, I'm going to call them in too for, for some tune-ups because most of those people or culture problem is coming from the top, right? They're setting the tone um, for what the values that are not just listed on the wall, but the ones that are being demonstrated and lived out. And kind of in the similar way I talked about with my kids, it's like the leader is the parent in that situation, and that's where it all comes from. So if you have a people or a culture problem, it's probably you.
Right.
That's what needs to be addressed, right? Like all those little things, people's roles or the job functions, all those things can be adjusted, but the actual culture comes definitely from the top. And that's where that doesn't matter what you say or what's written on your website, your values are, but it's what they're actually witnessing day to day. That's where the company culture is coming from.
That's for sure. You were reminding me about having space for others, even though their opinions might differ from ours or their value system may be different. I was thinking about I think he's the 14th century philosopher poet Rumi, who said, "Out there beyond right doing and wrong doing, there's a place where you and I agree. I'll meet you there." And it sounds like that's something you're always aspiring to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been back to what's happening now. It's really sad to see the anger because I'm not feeling angry about what's happening politically. I'm feeling really sad, and so it's been difficult to watch people get so inflamed and angry about certain things when it's like, man, this is a time that we should all be sad that I don't care if you agreed with Charlie Kirk or not. This shouldn't be happening in our country. Like free speech is a value that's given to us in our constitution for a reason, because this shouldn't happen to someone expressing their views. And so, yeah, for me, it's made me even more conscious of how much we need to have more conversations and open conversations and look for points of connection and not separation.
Very, very true. Very, very true. And that whole situation overshadows many conversations today. But pivoting back a little bit to the topic of integrity, I've loved to ask our guest this question in some form or fashion. And I'm wondering, Doctor, was there a time you can remember and share with our audience when your integrity was challenged and how you had to respond to it?
Yeah, that's a tough question, and I would say it's tough mostly because I like I said, I hold my values really tightly, and so there really hasn't been a time. I think there's been maybe instances where I've had to hold or set boundaries in certain areas, and a lot of that has to just do with my time and access to me. Um, I wouldn't call it an integrity issue as much. I really can't think of a situation where that was truly brought into question, because it's not really a question for me. But I think I've a lot of times I've had to go back to what my values are, and because as you grow and progress in your career, there's more and more demands of you and of your time, and especially when you're in the consulting world, and you know the dollar signs start to get bigger and the client list starts to get bigger, and I have to just go back to, okay, if I say that my family is first, how is that showing up with how I'm allocating my time and my energy? So for me, I think when I've kind of had to check myself from that standpoint, it really comes down to my time and accessibility. So if I say that my kids are my world, why is 8 hours of my day, 10 hours of my day, 12 hours of my day not dedicated to them? So creating that balance, and just revisiting your values often. I mean, often. I do it all the time. It helps that I get to do it with other people, because it's like a big mirror in my face of like, well, is your schedule aligning with what you're telling me matters to you? And then I go, is my schedule aligning with what I'm saying matters to me? And so I think constantly being faced and confronted with, to have to challenge myself in those same ways. Am I consistently showing up the way that I've decided I want to? And oftentimes that's not the case, and I'll kind of have to walk my boundaries back a little bit.
Yes, it's don't tell me, I would say to folks, including my kids, don't tell me what's important. Show me your calendar and show me your wallet or checkbook. Where you spend each of those is what's important to you. Everything else is complicated.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you really evaluate that, sometimes we get out of line, and it's tempting. I mean, I get requests all the time for new clients and things like that. And well, you can convince yourself, well, if I do this, then I can do this for my kids, or that'll pay for our next vacation. But before that, it's going to steal, you know, hundreds of hours of your time. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's a tough balance to strike, but I think I have to give myself the same assignment that I'm giving my clients, and so that convicts me pretty often.
Yes. One of the things I always love, and you're probably in a better position than many of our folks, but I always like to ask our guests about, because we have the younger audience that listens in as well. What are some of those insights and tips that you gained over the years, wish you had earlier? You talked a little bit about some things you thought you hoped you knew 10 years prior, but what are some of those insights and tips that you would say, geez, if I could have told Tess this earlier and knew this, it would have changed or improved the rapidity of my trajectory and my clarity on that path. What do you share there?
I think the humility portion has a lot to do with it because, as we're climbing the corporate ladder and we're chasing down these things, like, of course, those things are not inherently bad. Like, we want to get good grades to get into a good college, to get into, the good internship and then the good job. And I sadly, I watch these kids entering freshman year of college and they're so burnt out, like the light is out of their eyes just from the grind that they had to do just to get to that point. And here they are at the base of the mountain and it's like all the light has left their body, and it breaks my heart, honestly, because the second they get here they're going, I got to get an internship. I got to get into this honors program. I got to get into, in the finance industry, I teach at the business school. The finance internships is like 2 years ahead. So if you want a summer of junior year internship, you got to apply for that 2 years before. And it's super competitive, and you got to have the grades. You got to have the letter of recommendation. Their faculty members don't even know them yet. So, like, I'm not going to write someone a letter of recommendation if they haven't really closely worked with me and been a student of mine. Just the grind of all that, it's relentless, and it starts, I don't know, it seems younger and younger. Look at me. I was worried about my kids in kindergarten not reading early enough. They have this pressure from day one academically, and it just never lets off the gas. It goes and it goes, and it's internship, and then you got to have this job, and you got to be the first one there, and you got to be the last one to leave. And this grind culture, it's a trap, honestly, right? Like, I tell them all the time, the internship's not what you think it is. That's not the only way. And we get caught up in this. And then you got to have the house and you got to have the car, and it never stops, right? And so seeing that and the young people really breaks my heart for them, because they are smart and they are capable and they have all these things, but the light is going out of them. So I think giving ourselves permission to, like, really get intentional about how we're approaching our lives. And this is where I go back again always to that self-leadership thing, and, like, what's it all for? You get all the way there, and I see, because then I get them when they're mid-level career, 40s, 50s, 60 years old, and they're still coming to me as a coach saying, I'm not happy. I have money. I can pay you. How much do you want? But I'm telling you the same thing I'm telling the 20-year-olds, So I think it's really about the journey more than it is about the destination always. And I think we miss that. I think as parents, we miss that. As leaders, we miss that. As individuals, we miss that. And kind of having the humility, and that it's not about the grind. It's not about the competition. That matters a little bit to an extent. But if the whole process is not fulfilling your soul and taking the light out that I see so often, it's all for nothing. And so I think, man, the 20s were my best years. That was like the most fun decade, but they're so burnt out now in their 20s that they're missing the whole thing. And so that's what I would really say, is to just get intentional with how you're approaching your life, and what your values are, what your goals are, and make them big, but also realistic in a way that you're going to enjoy the process.
Yeah, the old comedian Lily Tomlinson is credited with saying the problem with the rat race, which many people get caught up in, is that the winner's still a rat. We have to be real careful, right? That we don't get caught up in a rat race. It has nothing to do with our own meaning, our own purpose, and our own value system. It's
And you
been a
have to be able to feel successful always in the present. And you can do that. You can feel successful every single day, right? Have you seen the video about making your bed every morning? Finding success and happiness and contentment and fulfillment in your day-to-day life, that's where it's at, because we don't know how many days we have, and even so, you can get 50 years in and have nothing really to show for it. So I
yeah,
think it's really important.
Yes, we're coming close to the end. It's been a wonderful conversation with Dr. Tess Breen, a communications and executive leadership coach and trainer with her own consulting firm. She's also a full-time professor at Chapman University here in Orange, California. Dr. Breen, if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Um, my website is just drtessbreen.com, drtessbreen.com. My email is just tess@drtessbreen.com. I'm on social media platforms. Feel free to reach out any way possible, but I'd be happy to get in touch with your listeners.
Wonderful. Dr. Breen, this has been a delightful conversation, very informative, very insightful, and obviously very value based. And so it's been a refreshing conversation to have. I really appreciate you and your time. If any of our listeners out there want to be on the Power of Integrity podcast where leadership aligns with principles, reach out to our firm. You should be able to find us. Our phone number 949-955-1188. We'll be happy to figure out a time that can work for any of those folks that would like to make it onto this show. We're recording several of them a month, and we'd be happy to entertain the possibility. Thank you again, Dr. Breen. It's really been a powerful conversation, and we really enjoy. And your students are and your clients are very fortunate to have you. Never mind those four kids and their mom.
Thank you so much.
The information presented in this program is provided for informational purposes only. The information is believed to be reliable, but no guarantee of accuracy is made or implied. Expressions of opinions are as of this date and are subject to change without notice. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult a legal or tax professional. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of capital. Ralph Adamo is registered with the securities and are offered through Kovac Securities, Inc., member FINRA. SIPC, 6451 North Federal Highway, Suite 1201, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33308. Telephone number 954-782-4771. Investment advisory services are offered through Kovac Advisors, Inc. Integrity Wealth Management is not affiliated with Kovac Securities, Inc. or Kovac Advisors, Inc.